The first question is, how do I make marriage work after a mistake? And then another person asks it differently and says, what if my mind is no longer in the marriage?
Okay. Well, in answering that question, what do I do if I feel I've made a mistake? And what do I do when my mind is no longer in the marriage? Now, the truth is, the first question that we need to ask is, even though you think you've made a mistake, is it possible that in spite of the mistake you think you've made, can you still have a good marriage? Can you still enjoy a good marriage? Now, like I mentioned about Zig Ziglar, if you think you married the wrong person and you treat the wrong person like the right person, over a period of time, the person actually starts to become the right person. Now, is it easy? No. Is it possible? Yeah. Now, the deception, however, is that there's a possibility that you may have done things wrong, but we're not aware of the impact of your behavior on your spouse. The person could actually have been the right person. Now, does the person have flaws? I'm sure they do. Now, what you have control over is to treat the person right. And I would advise that you spend a lot more time praying for the person, treating the person right, whether you feel like it or not. Now, feelings are a very, very interesting thing. The feelings respond to the direction of our thoughts. If I dwell long enough on a negative thing, it affects my feelings. If I dwell long enough on a positive thing, it actually starts to affect my feelings. And this applies to the person who says my mind is no longer in it. Well, thank God your mind can change. So the question is that if you keep focusing on the fact that this thing can't work, this thing can't work, this thing can't work, this thing can't work, the direction your mind goes is the direction your emotions will go, and it's the directions your actions will go, and it will determine the outcome. So the Bible says, guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues or the direction your life will flow. So if what you want is to have a successful marriage, then yeah, you found yourself in a difficult place, and know you are in a difficult place. But also remember that if you do the right thing over a period of time, you'll come out of that difficult place into a much better space. Now, so long as we're not dealing with abuse, we're not dealing with physical abuse or something like that, or a serious case of infidelity, it can work. And even if it's a serious case of infidelity, if the couple still want to stay together, I've seen God do miracles, and I've seen couples actually recover. Now, but lastly, I would say, look, seek counseling, because there probably might be more other aspects that your question has not revealed. So I think that's how I would respond to both questions. Thank you.
Please, I would like this webinar to address how to deal with a spouse that has a bestie of the opposite sex whom they are constantly chatting with, gisting with, giving and receiving car rides, sitting together during programs, etc. To make matters worse, they are even both office mates. Second question, in the same category, Pastor Shala. How do you handle a spouse who still denies being in an extramarital relationship even though you have evidence?
All right. I'm going to start from the last question and then feed into the very first one. And I may as well just address everybody. When it comes to members of the opposite sex, we must be very careful. There's what we call appropriate behavior for a married couple and inappropriate behavior that may not necessarily be sinful. And when you took your married vows, one of the vows you made was forsaking all others and cling on to one. When you break that vow, you destroy your home. You may not be cheating, but you can be emotionally cheating on your spouse. You may not be sexually cheating on your spouse, but sometimes you can be emotionally cheating. I mean, when you are spending too much time with somebody of the opposite sex, it's a precursor for an affair. It's a precursor. And let me tell you something. The average woman or man, for example, if they were friends with you before you got married, when you get married, the woman will tend to want to become friends with your spouse. And, and spend more time with your spouse than with you, if their intentions are clean. For those that really want to have an affair with you, or would rather, they would zero in on just one member at the exclusion of the other. Listen, your marriage is worth protecting, and some relationships should not survive your marriage. What I mean by that is, I'm not saying we should be nasty, but they cannot come in between you and your spouse. And it could happen with a guy. Now, if you are the person guilty of this and your spouse has been complaining, what I would just say is reverse the coin. If you are the man who has a female friend and your wife has been complaining about the female friend and you feel she's overreacting, okay, so just imagine every night your wife comes home, maybe late, 9 o'clock, and is a guy bringing her in a G-Wagon every night, parks in front of your house, and is gisting, and your wife is giggling. And then she comes inside and you say, "Who is that?" And your wife says, "Just a friend." Can you handle it? Now, so we need to recognize that there are just certain interactions with members of the opposite sex that are inappropriate. So I would advise that you separate, or you keep a distance with that person. That relationship cannot be as close if it's beginning to interfere with your marriage. I mean, that's what we call third-party interference, or rather one of the things we call third-party interference. Now, if you've caught your spouse cheating, you see, because if you say the person is denying it, it's likely your spouse hasn't yet been caught red-handed. So it's probably a chat and they are still trying to lie. Now you'll be surprised that behavior is pretty predictable amongst people who are cheating on their spouse. When first confronted, if they think the evidence is not strong enough, They try and downplay it. It's nothing. We're just having fun. Well, the only thing you can do first, one of the things you can do is express your displeasure. I mean, but don't ever make them feel it's okay. Don't ever make them feel it's okay. It's not okay. The other thing, to be honest, that you can do is pray about the matter. But in terms of that relationship, never ever make your spouse feel it is okay. And somebody says, why? Because sin thrives in darkness. As long as you are permissive and you are saying you are trying to be an understanding spouse, it will thrive. Just say, look, I'm not in support of this. I'm not saying be nasty. I'm not saying you start policing the person around, but you need to talk. And the day it comes up, you need to pray, to be honest. And it gets more difficult when the spouse refuses to change. Well, I would say it's a difficult one, and the truth about the matter is the fact that if the spouse refuses to change after several warnings, then you are left with a choice to either stay and endure the marriage and trust that the person will change, or the only condition that Jesus did give for infidelity is that one should separate. But it should not be the first thing we do. We should still see whether the marriage can be saved if the person is just adamant. And well, if you can handle it, stay there. But you're also going to need a lot of counseling to help you emotionally deal with what's going on. And so so give it time, work on it. But if the person is adamant and it's affecting your mental health, it's affecting your emotional health, it's really messing you up, then perhaps you take a break. But as much as possible, try and work at it. So I think that's how I'll answer that for now.
How can a woman manage a man who thinks that silent treatment is the best way to manage conflicts at the home? And also, he loves keeping to himself. Communication is practically nil in the house, and whenever the wife tries to start communication, he sees it as being disturbed. Someone else asks a similar question and says, I would like to ask, even if I do change my ways, yet there is no change in the marriage. What if you married someone that doesn't talk about issues but prefers to give the silent treatment no matter how long they are ready to keep malice?
All right. One of the things that we need to remember that there's always two sides to the same coin. Your spouse is not mad. First, there's a possibility that the way you talk hurts your spouse. And usually, opposites attract. Now, somebody is likely to be more sensitive than the other, and the way they would usually respond is to keep quiet. Now, the first thing I'll say is that listen, try and remember when your spouse has spoken, what are the things they said to you when you've complained about their silent treatment? Did they say that the way you talk, you talk brashly, you don't know how to talk, and on your part, you trivialized it? You felt the person is just being oversensitive. You may want to pay attention to how you address your spouse. You say everybody has their language. Now, if you find out that your spouse, there are people your spouse opens up to, it could be that your style of communication is not working for your spouse. And so, just talking anyhow, you need to understand your spouse. There are certain things that they respond to. Now, you may say the same thing to somebody else, and the person may not have an issue with it. But each person is different. And one of the things about having a successful marriage is studying the person we marry, understanding the style of communication that works for them, and adjusting to that style of communication. You can't insist on doing things your own way and expect that your spouse must react the way you want them to react. So what I would first say is that understand the way you might be talking may be wrong. So adjust that first of all. Now, on the flip side, there are people who one of the ways they want to teach you a lesson is to not talk to you, especially if they feel that if they don't talk to you, it will make you do whatever they want to do. Now, I'm talking here about using silent treatment as a control measure. Now, before I go on with that, please remember, do your part first. And so in certain situations, if this has gone on for years and you have begun to see that it's a pattern of punishing you or is hurting you, the first thing I would say is the fact that you have to find a way so that that behavior no longer hurts you. And that starts by asking yourself very important questions. That why does this silent treatment bother me so much? The answer to that question will help you deal with things in yourself that needs to be dealt with. And you'll find out that when the silent treatment no longer upsets you, no longer makes you sad, it's just a matter of time that your spouse will realize that it's not working and will be forced to try something else. I mean, for example, if they're treating you, are not talking to you, what the spouse would expect if it's being used as a control mechanism is that you'll be miserable, right? Now, when they see that you are no longer miserable, it means the silent treatment is no longer working. Now, you on the other hand, it takes two to fight now. You on the other hand, once you've gotten over your emotions, be nice. If they don't talk to you, talk to them. If they don't greet you, greet them. Now you can see what I mean by maturity in marriage. I mean, it takes maturity to respond that way. It takes a lot of strength to respond that way. And so when you do that, so the first thing you do is a defensive thing, which is you don't allow the behavior to affect you the way it used to. You do it prayerfully, you do it introspectively, which means you think about it, uncover the reason why it's upsetting you, and prayerfully deal with it so that it no longer bothers you like it used to. Then you are equipped to be able to respond to that kind of negative behavior in a positive way that deals with the negative behavior.
With respect to building a good home, please, sir, how do I deal with in-laws? I am newlywed. I have a sister-in-law whom I love, but she is not yet married. She's older than both myself and my husband, who is her brother. I have reflected a lot of times and tried to manage my thoughts, but I still keep finding it uncomfortable that she calls him her bestie, she hugs him, she buys him things, she follows us on our trips or errands, she books to visit with us regularly, calls my husband to help her with things at her own home. On the family group I am on, she tells him that they are family, but I never get any such responses from her. She sides with her mom when my mother-in-law gives me a task and maybe it's not done to expectation. During our outings, she usually calls my husband, her brother, aside to discuss family matters. I have discussed this severally with my husband, but he has a very soft spot for his family. I do not wish to be territorial or come across as possessive, but I don't know how to handle this. Am I jealous? Am I insecure? Do I need to change? Please help me, sir.
All right. I would first like to empathize with you. Well, to be honest, I mean, I can understand when somebody zeroes in on one spouse to one's exclusion. It has a way of making us feel insecure. Now, however, one of the things you never do is allow your fears to drive your actions. Any fear-driven action doesn't end well. And so whatever approach you take, don't let it be fear-driven. And there are two basic responses that fear would cause. Number one, it will cause you to fight her, or it will cause you to withdraw from her. And those two actions will not bring about a desired result. Now, because you've done what you're supposed to do, which is talk to your husband, and he doesn't seem to be getting it. And so, in terms of something practical to do, what I'm going to say to you is that, listen, she cannot steal your husband from you. Don't worry. What I would suggest is be intentionally nice to her, whether she responds or not. Just make up your mind whether you feel like it, and keep thinking about good things to do for your sister-in-law. Keep thinking about things to do to bless your sister-in-law. Keep doing selfless work. You'll be surprised that over a period of time, she'll start to shift more to you than to your brother. Now, you say, I wanted to start with this, and then while you are doing this, I want you to start praying for your sister-in-law, praying for your husband, and praying for your mother-in-law. But honestly, what you don't want to do is allow your fears to drive your behavior. The right thing to do from God's perspective is treat her right. Okay, somebody says, why? He says, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless them that curse you. Pray for them that have treated you badly. Now, some people think that's stupid, but that's power. You'll be amazed how influential love can be. If there's anything that transforms people, it's love. And listen, just keep doing it. For as many of us that have watched, is it Fireproof Your Marriage or something like that? That talks about the power of intentional love. So just listen, some people will advise become her friends. It's good. But what I'm saying is the fact that, you see, friendship is a two-way thing. I mean, she has to accept it. So I'm saying just intentionally love her. Do things, go out of your way. And you're just doing it because it's a better way to respond. Now, when you start doing that repeatedly, you'll be surprised that it first changes you. It changes you on the inside. And then afterwards, it starts to change her. And then it starts to change the attitude of your husband. So it's not easy to do, but it's a way to respond. Thank you.
How do you handle a spouse who has had a rough family background in terms of marriage? She is very sensitive and tends to notice everything, which makes her put up her guards. Anytime we think issues have been resolved, these same things keep resurfacing months later. How can you help? What do I do, sir? Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you have been able to identify the fact that your spouse, your wife, has emotional wounds and that have made her very sensitive, very defensive. It's a very good first step. However, you need to be able to deal with it, you need to adjust your expectation to reality. Emotional wounds don't heal overnight. And the question is, what are the things you need to be doing repeatedly for a period of time that will help her become more secure and to heal better? Now, it is very likely that one of your spouse's love language are words of affirmation. And to be honest, there are certain things you should be doing regularly, and there are certain things you need to minimize doing. The first thing you need to do regularly is affirm your spouse all the time. Do things, say things that build her self-esteem every day. It's intentional. And don't do it because you just want her to change overnight. Do it because you want to help her. You see, it's going to require you to be less self-centered. It's going to require you to focus on ministering to your wife. And you see, I'm choosing my words because if I use the word minister to your wife, then you will understand that marriage is not just about how happy you are. You're going to marry to minister to the other person. And so one of the things that God wants you to do, and it's likely that you are equipped to do it, if you would remove the focus from you and focus on her. And you need to spend a lot more time building her self-esteem. And honestly, you have to reduce your criticism. I know that some of us feel that, if I don't talk, the person will grow worse. Listen to me. Rarely have I seen negative criticism improve anybody. You see, whatever you emphasize is what you strengthen in the other person. If you emphasize the negative, you strengthen the negative. If you emphasize the positive, you cause the person to grow. And so use words to heal your spouse. Encourage them. And if you need to correct, then you need to pad it. You need to affirm, correct, affirm. All right? But you need to have made a lot of deposits before you can start to make withdrawals with your correction and with your criticism. So, because if you look at the ratio at which you are affirming and criticizing, if the criticism is just even a little above the affirmation, you are going to wound her more. She's going to react more. Then she's going to trust you less. She's not going to open up to you. She's going to misinterpret everything you say. So honestly, the best thing you can do to help your spouse is focus on her good points and do it. Those bad points, pray about it. And if you need to make any correction, affirm, correct. It will still hurt, but before you make those corrections, make sure you've affirmed her 10 times more. The more affirmed she is, the better she'll be able to absorb correction. So I think that's where I would stop with that.
How do you know how much baggage you can carry before you get into marriage, especially if this baggage is not immediately apparent, or the person themselves whom one is interested in cannot see or isn't even aware of the baggage that they have?
Well, the issue about baggage is not so much about whether the person can see it or not see it in courtship. It's about you. Now, that brings the point that your courtship can't be long. Sorry, it can't be short. Never rush into marriage. You see, the purpose of doing that is so that you get to know yourselves. I mean, people meeting today and wanting to get married in 3 months' time, I'm sorry, it's not wise. You don't get to know the person well enough. You don't get to know their flaws well enough. You don't get to know whether you can handle it well enough. And so give yourself time. I mean, some people say 6 months. I recommend at least a year. There's no way in a year anybody will not show you. I mean, they will show you their, and so sometimes when young people come to me and they tell me we've never fought before, we are always smiling at each other. They're not ready for counseling. Sometimes I tell them, go and spend some time. When you have fought, well, come back. There's something to cancel. We can now start to bring about adjustments. Now, so when something is a baggage too heavy, you will know. If something is stressing you out, now the question you ask yourself is this: if this behavior does not change in 15 years of marriage, can I handle it? If you cannot handle it, then you will know your level. And usually, if you've spent at least a year, I'm not talking about a year where you're not seeing each other very often. I'm talking about a year where you are seeing each other quite often. You will be able to tell. And then the question is, this error, is it something we can work at? Is it something that I can carry? Is it something that if it doesn't change for 15 years, can I live with it? If your truthful answer is you can't live with it, then seek counseling first of all to see whether it's something that the two of you can be assisted in changing and in improving. And if after counseling it still doesn't improve, then you may need to ask yourself that question I just said: can you live with this? If your answer is that you can live with it, but make sure, now the live with it means it doesn't change, and don't deceive yourself. And then you will know whether it's a baggage you can handle or not. All right, so I think that is where I'll stop with that question.
How does a couple cope when one partner earns significantly more than the other and it's affecting the family's ability to save? The partner earning less feels unhappy and overwhelmed, and it's starting to take a serious emotional toll. Second question: Scripture says 2 is better than 1 because one will lift the other up. How can you as a woman keep doing the heavy lifting endlessly, and now you're at your wit's end? And then a third question having to do with family finances: how do I handle a stingy spouse?
Okay, those are very good questions. And to be able to answer it effectively, I think I need to first give some background when it comes to finances. Now, one of the things about money is that it has the capacity to trigger our 3 core fears. That is both for the man and for the woman. When finances are not flowing for the man, the 3 fears that it triggers is the fear that he will be disrespected, 1, because he's not able to make enough money. The fear that he will be helpless in the home, and the fear that his wife, because he's not earning, will control him. Now, those are 3 fears that affect a man. Now, to be candid, finances especially affect men more than they do women. So many times when these 3 fears are triggered in men, it starts to trigger a woman's 3 core fears. The first is that her fear of disconnection. She starts to feel her husband disconnect emotionally from her, and that triggers a woman. The second is the fear of not being appreciated. And the third is the fear of a complete loss of love. Now, so when you're dealing with financial issues in marriage, in which it starts to trigger negative behavior, a lot of these behaviors and reactions are coming from a place of fear. Now, because each marriage is not exactly the same, and men and women, and different men and different women respond differently, is why I'm coming from this angle. Knowing that we're dealing with a fear-based reaction means that whatever action that is going to work has to be an action that is faith-based. When I say faith, is that an action that calms fears and that makes the other person feel secure. And words are a powerful tool for releasing faith, or should I say, in making the other person feel assured. In fact, words sometimes even more than actions, but words and actions, especially words, help. Now, I think quite some of those questions, it almost appears that because if the man has more money and the woman doesn't have as much money, in most marriages, it seldomly causes a problem, except if the man starts to oppress the woman. But usually, if the wife is making more money than the husband, it triggers those fears I'm talking about. Now, to be honest, it creates a sensitive season in that marriage. And I think the wife will do better constantly reaffirming and constantly encouraging her husband in this situation. I'm not sure, some people say things like, give him your money, pass your salary to him. Well, in many cases, it doesn't work, because sometimes when you give him the money, for some guys, it's even a reminder of his failure to be able to provide. So you may find him not being as appreciative or as grateful. For some, you start to enable bad behavior. I mean, the person starts getting used to money that he's not worked for and starts to misbehave. So I'm not sure that works. And so, but I noticed that constant affirmation, constant faith in the man's ability to achieve is something the wife needs to focus on. What do I mean? I mean, you need to regularly tell, look, honey, I believe in you. I know you'll make it. I know you're going to do well in life. Because one of the emotional needs of a man is encouragement. And so in that period of vulnerability, one of the things he needs more than ever from his wife is a lot of encouragement. And so you need to do that a lot. You need to constantly encourage. You need to constantly, if you can help. If he asks for help, do it, and things like that. Now, then in dealing with a stingy husband, well, you have to let him know. I mean, it's the truth. I mean, what I mean by that is it doesn't necessarily, you see, first of all, by being stingy, the guy has created some dysfunction in the home. The first thing you need to do is you need to be able to communicate how he's coming across to you without being offensive, and the two of you need to talk about it, but you should not attack him on it. What I mean by that is that if you come in an accusatory manner, it's going to cause his defensive walls to go up and he's not going to listen to you. And so when he does certain things, find a way to communicate how it makes you feel without attacking him. I mean, if you say to him, you are just a stingy person, you don't like, you're too tight-fisted, you're too this one, you're too this one, you're attacking. And he's not likely going to listen to you. Okay? Now, a lot of times, stingy people, what's informing the stinginess? I'll be honest with you, fear. If the person has experienced poverty in the past, they don't want to go back there, so they're very tight-fisted. They hold fast to it. And you need to check yourself too. If you are the spender in the marriage, he's going to be afraid of you. So, one of the other tools that helps to handle marital tension is to do a budget, plan your finances, and look at the expenses. If you can't do it together, somebody should do it. If you can do it, do it. Get all the cost in the home and track your cost and show the other person. For example, you may be dealing with a saver and you are a spender. In such a case, a spender will always consider a saver stingy. Now, the truth is the fact that one method is not better than the other. What works is to combine the two together. The thing about savers is that if you can show prudency, if you can show a plan of how the money is going to be spent, and you can show that saving is important in that budget, you help to reduce their fears, and it helps the saver be more willing to spend money. Praise God. So I think I should stop there. Thank you.
How can my marriage work when I'm constantly abused by my wife? The second man asks, he says, I observe that whenever I am vulnerable with my wife, speaking with her about my weaknesses, my fears, and things about my childhood and extended family that are really sensitive for me to disclose, it seems like I only arm her with ammunition that she will eventually use to score points when we have arguments and conflicts. She often brings up these things and drives them in like a drill, and doing that hits and hurts me deeply. I have spoken to her about it, but nothing has changed. Unfortunately, I am now subconsciously careful about what I tell her. I want to be completely open with her, but these things make it difficult. How do I get past this difficulty and help her stop this habit, in addition to praying for her growth and maturity?
Well, that's a very good question. Look, so here's the reality. Not everybody is mature enough to handle certain intimate details about us. And just because somebody is my spouse does not necessarily mean the person is currently emotionally mature enough to handle vulnerabilities I tell them. Now, that doesn't mean they will always be like that, but you need to recognize your spouse's current level of maturity. And so it's also important that every time she does it, you need to draw her attention to it. Sometimes we seem to think that people remember certain things we've said in the past. You'll be surprised that if because they're not on the receiving end of their behavior, they forget. Which is why repetition is the key to change. Now, I'm not talking about criticism, but I'm just saying that you need to remind her. And secondly, you need, if the last time you guys had an argument and she violated trust, you need to mention it. And for now, let her know that, look, I can't open up to you for now until I'm sure you can handle it well. And then don't open critical things to her. Start her off with things that are small. And then as she begins to handle it properly, then you can start to open up more. But during this period, you guys must be communicative. Now, our default is to withdraw and not talk about it at all. Now, when you do that, you have closed the road for improvement. Now, it's only by positive communication over a period of time, which will actually involve a measure of repetition, before we will begin to see change. All right. So the first thing is that she can't handle what you are revealing to her. Her actions have proven it. So what you don't want to be thrown at you, don't reveal. However, you need to let her know your desire to get closer, to be able to open up to her, and make reference to the fact that the way she handled it is making it difficult for you to do so. Okay? And this conversation should be had when you are not upset. Yeah, because there's something about when we speak when we're upset that the person doesn't hear what we're saying, and all they hear is the tone of our voice and our anger. So that have these conversations when you're upset, and be willing to repeat the conversation, because it's what it requires to bring about a change of behavior. All right, so I think I would stop there.
What do you do when your fiance calls off your wedding without the chance of resolving whatever may have been wrong, because she says she doesn't feel loved, without even listening or even informing any family members or counselors? Then she comes back weeks later and says that you can come back when you're ready and then love her exactly the way she wants to be loved.
To be honest, she's already revealed certain aspects of her personality. And for me, I think it's already communicating that she's only thinking about the relationship as it affects her. And you say, why do I say that? Because it takes a certain measure of insensitivity to take a decision like that without considering how it will impact the other person. And then 6 weeks later, without even thinking about the damage you may have caused, tell the person, when you are ready, come and love me as you want me to be loved. I'm not sure you want to proceed with that. To be honest, I think you should give that relationship a pause at this point. And if she wants counseling, let her do counseling. But there's a lot she needs to. There's something very wrong with that mindset. And it reeks of selfishness, it reeks of self-centeredness. And it is already showing you the pattern that your marriage will take. So if you're okay with it, if you're okay that it's only how she feels that matters and how you feel does not matter, you can continue. But my advice would press a pause on that relationship until she's ready to accept what she's done wrong and willing to go for counseling. And if she's not, I can't advise you to go ahead.
How can one deal with a lack of intimacy in marriage? The second says, "Good comes to a time when sex becomes an issue in marriage. How do we solve irregular sex that can result in infidelity?"
To a very large extent, I'm not sure I subscribe to that belief that it's only a lack of enough sex that causes infidelity. Because there are people who have had enough sex, regular sex, and still cheat. Infidelity is not something that you stumble into. It's something you intentionally move towards. Many times the warning signals are there, but we deceive ourselves that we're adults, and so we go for it. It's not. But however, it still does not downplay the importance of sex in marriage. Now, the truth is that to improve this, the couple have to talk a lot. They have to communicate in a safe environment. There has to be a lot of, and I can't guarantee that it's something you can fully solve in just one discussion. There are reasons why sex is not regular. Some of the reasons could be that the relationship itself is not where it's supposed to be. I mean, the truth is that with the more conflicts you have in a relationship, in most cases, it will affect their sex lives. Except if the two of them have a very high sexual libido. But in most cases, when a man and a woman are having a lot of conflicts in the home, they are making each other unhappy, one of the first places that will start to suffer is their sex life. Unlike men, women need to feel emotionally connected to their husbands before they would want to have sex with them. And a guy has to learn to be sensitive to his wife's needs and has to learn to give her attention, love, and care if she's going to respond positively to him. A lot of affection needs to be verbalized and needs to be acted upon. And then, the two of them need to also explore styles of sex that appeal to them. The truth is the fact that there has to be a compromise. Certain ways some couples want to have sex or certain spouses want to have sex may not be in agreement with the other person. And so a compromise has to be reached. And, really sex should be called lovemaking. And if it's that, then you need to care that you give pleasure to your spouse. And so, as much as possible, the two of them need to work at improving their sex life and communicating in a way that is affirmative and that doesn't hurt the other person's self-esteem. And it may also involve learning more about how to give pleasure to the other person. But I think communication is pretty key, and the way the couple treat themselves. And if you are dealing with something that is caused by trauma in the past, then there might be a need for the person who has been traumatized to seek counseling. Because yes, while there are other reasons, why people may cheat, but starving one spouse of sex is a bad idea. The Bible actually doesn't encourage it. And so I think those are some of the things, because to a very large extent also, you need to deal with these on a case-by-case basis. So, but what I've just done is lay out certain principles, which is communication. They need to talk about sex. The couple need to talk about sex. They need to talk about their preferences. They need to reach a compromise, and they need to treat each other right. If there's love in the marriage, it actually helps in their sex life. It makes both parties want to make sacrifices for the other. It makes both parties want to please the other person. But you can't be treating your spouse badly and complaining that you're not having enough sex. It's not going to happen. You want more sex, treat them better. You want more sex, improve your communication. All right? You can't just abandon your spouse all day and come back in late at night and say you want to have sex. Even if she complies the first day and you repeat that the second day, the third day, it's not going to happen. So there's a need to adjust behavior. There's a need to improve communication. And so there's always a reason. And if it's a case of trauma, there might be a need to seek counseling. Yeah, so I think that's how I would answer that question.
So this is the question. What if the third party is of the same gender? It is not a sexual relationship, but I know that morally and spiritually it's dragging my husband and marriage down. My husband says he's working on ending the relationship, but he hides to keep the relationship and communication going. What do I do?
Well, fighting him over it is not going to work. What that will do is cause the relationship to go underground, and it will thrive there. Truth be told, you definitely will have to pray about it. While reminding your spouse about the negative impact, just know you can't force it. That's where prayer comes in. But periodically mention it, but don't what's the word? Don't overflog it. But you need to help him see the impact, or shall I say the negative impact, that relationship. Now here's the truth. He will learn. You see, there are two ways we all learn: by instruction or with cane. So sometimes you have to allow your spouse to receive cane while praying that so that God's influence is around the cane, so that the whole experience of facing the consequences of his action does not affect him negatively. But there are just some things you have to wait out and allow God to run the course. So what you do in short times is you keep loving him and you keep telling him the truth. The Bible says, speaking the truth to one another in love, we will grow up into Christ in all things.
How do you react or deal with a wife who is very temperamental? She flares up easily she raises her voice. No matter how calm the conversation may have started, once she gets upset, she begins to raise her voice uncontrollably. What do I do? A wife asks, she says, how do you manage a man that has a lot of misplaced priorities, lacks a sense of saving, and won't stop spending till his account turns red and then he starts borrowing again?
So the first one is a wife that responds with a lot of anger and can sometimes become uncontrollable. Well, the first thing the person who asked that question needs to realize is that anger is a secondary emotion. Usually, the primary emotion could be emotional wounds, frustration, or fear. In the case of your wife, the way she's responding, it's coming from a deep emotional wound. And it's not about whether you shout or you don't shout. It's the fact that what you said opened up a wound and she saw red. Now, usually, those wounds are triggered when we try to correct certain things our spouse does. In this case, you need to study her. You need to understand those areas she's sensitive about. The second thing is to realize you are not God. Because sometimes what drives us to want to correct somebody is that we want to change them. And we are afraid that if we don't see anything, they won't change. You know, psychologists have actually discovered that to bring out the best, or should I say better behavior in a person, we have to recognize their strong points and drive it. Constantly build on that. It improves your spouse's self-esteem. It helps them to heal. And after a while, they'll start to respond positively. From what you have described about your wife, you can't bring the best behavior from her through criticism. You can't. So, you would have to be able to say what you want to communicate without attacking her person. So, for example, if what she did made you feel she was selfish, for example, made you feel she wasn't thinking about you, don't start that conversation by saying that was very selfish of you. Why don't you say, look, it made me feel you didn't care about my feelings. Now that's better. I'm not attacking her. I'm simply telling her how I feel. And then you will have to intentionally do a lot more affirmation. Now, the chances are you are not used to it. But you see, that's why marriage demands change. You have to learn to get used to it to improve your home. So many times in future, when people see a good marriage, They think it just happened overnight, but they wouldn't know the sacrifices and the changes we need to make to cause our marriage to get to that point. And I would say, please pray for your wife and please be understanding that that anger is coming from a place of emotional wounds. Yeah. Then the second one, which is on finances. And you mentioned that the spouse is obviously a spender. Now, the assumption is that you have complained and the person doesn't seem to be listening. Well, chances are that you're dealing with a habit. Now, your greatest fear is the fact that the way your spouse handles finances is going to put the family in a very delicate position. And you have spoken once, you have spoken twice, and the person doesn't seem to be listening. Well, one of the things I would say is that when a behavior is a habit, then first you need to recognize what you're dealing with, and regular conversations, not in anger, not in irritation, have to be engaged with your spouse about the consequences of spending that way. Secondly, you would, in the interim, have to save so that at least there's some financial protection for the family, and while talking with your husband. If they would not listen to you, I promise you, life will teach them a lesson. And so he will learn. And if you didn't fight him, then when he's learning, he will then listen to you. But if you are fighting him, when he's learning, he won't talk to you. All right, so that's my advice. So fighting him about how he's spending money does not work. But you still need to talk to him. You need to let him know. And you need to bear in mind that sometimes people have to be allowed to face the consequences of their actions. And we need to be gracious to be able to help them when they get to that point. But while all this is going on, pray about it. Pray for him. All right. Okay.